Hello, my friends. Jacob's here one more time. Thank you for pressing play and for spending a little quality time, a little QT time with me as we dive into the symbolism and just the overall, what I think as a speculator, the beautiful message that I found in the Super Bowl as a whole, and also the quite dark and disturbing one. Because, of course, we're in a day where things can go both ways. It can go one way for a group of people, and it can go for another way for another group of people. As we see, the two teams are facing, the Eagles and the Chiefs. Last time around, of course, I wanted the Eagles to win because of the story, because of Aesop's fable, where the eagle is killed by the hunter, and because it used the feather that the eagle left behind. They met last time. It didn't turn out so good for the Eagles. That's why this time I was really hoping, as I said on the show, that they were going to win. In fact, I put out a post where I just kind of brought up all the crazy conspiracies that were going around. Benjamin Netanyahu gave Trump like an Apollo beeper. And they were like, oh, you know what happened with the beepers? Because they gave out the beepers and then they exploded. Remember how that happened? So a lot of people were very concerned, and they were getting everybody online a little stressed out about all of the little things. Everybody was wondering, why aren't you doing a Super Bowl prediction show? First of all, I don't have a magic ball. I don't got a crystal ball. I don't see into the future. I just told you what I thought would be, pretty good is if the Eagles won. And my posts that I put out were really to calm everyone down because there was so much. The fact that they were in the Caesars Superdome, of course, they were like, oh, Caesar's a big thing, which got me thinking I needed to go back, and I looked at Elon Musk and I type in, Caesar, and I find this post right here, the one you're looking at right now, where you got Mario and Luigi, and it looks like the assassination of Caesar. Luigi's doing the crime, and I don't mean Luigi Mangione. But I couldn't help but think to myself, doesn't that look like the two helmets, the Eagles and the Chiefs? I think to myself, I say, well, maybe based on this, maybe the Eagles are going to win. Maybe that's what's going to happen. Especially since the eagle was facing the arrows. Recently, we talked about this. We're usually on the logo. We can say the logo. It's really the seal of the United States, but the seal of the eagle, it was facing normally towards the olive branch, but recently it's been facing towards the arrows. So I thought, oh, this looks like the Eagles could win. So when I started thinking about this, I said, well, what would be really cool is if they won by numbers that we talk about on the show. And what could I think of at the time? I actually put this little post up. The only thing I could think of was, I'm like, well, maybe it'll be like 17 or 13. I said, maybe those will be the numbers that we're familiar with, these end times numbers. The 17, of course, because I thought it would be cool for Donald Trump. And the 13, of course, because Taylor Swift, who, by the way, got booed. So much symbolism to all of this before I even go into the breakdown of the halftime show. Do you know that just the score alone just made me feel just incredible? But that's not the way a lot of people went into the game. The very beginning of the game, what they did was they read out, they showed everybody the victims of what happened in New Orleans. That's how they began before there was the coin toss, and it landed on tails. But there were so many videos going around, everybody thinking that they were going to nuke the place or something else, that I had to put it out there and I had to tell everybody to pray. And I even said, you ever wonder why these things that we're hearing about, Trump's pager, his warning to Iran if something happens, the tragedy that happened in New Orleans, the past attempts on President Trump's life, the references of Caesar's assassination at the Superdome? I said, the sum of all fears, could it be, I put this out on social media, could it be to put you in a suggestive, fearful state so that while you're watching the game, worried whether or not your bet's going to come in? Some people bet, I put $20 down. I lost. I knew that it wasn't going to be 17-13 like I thought, which would have been cool, because I put a bet on, and I can't really profit from these things. I should have thought, oh my goodness, 22. That's the number we're always talking about on the show, the TAV. And then 40. It's 40 days, 40 nights. The temptation comes to an end. It's 40 years in the wilderness till you enter the promised land. We saw in Kendrick Lamar's video, the very end, game over. Game over. Unless you're going to play again. We're going to get into that. I said, you think this could be used to put you in a suggestive, fearful state to then easily manipulate you to buy a bunch of Oreos or Doritos? There were so many cool commercials too. All the commercials, they had to do with aliens, they had to do with clones. You would think that everybody has become like a conspiracy theorist around the world because that's basically what it was. Some of the commercials that caught my eye were the ones that had to do with, Christ coming again. One commercial from HeGetsUs.com, they played the song Your Own Personal Jesus, the Johnny Cash version, which is, from Depeche Mode. Back in the day, I listened to The Cure and The Smiths. I was like a weird kid because I was sick and, Anyway, that's a whole other story. Depeche Mode, that song, Your Own Personal Jesus, is not about a savior coming outside of yourself, but you becoming the savior. It was like all over. The message of Christ in you, the hope of glory, was like all over. Then, of course, they were showing pictures with this one book called Inner Excellence. They made like a big deal about inner excellence. Christ in you being revealed everywhere. Travis Seebeck sent me something, Animal Planet. Their doggy that they were sharing was Jubilee. Jubilee, can you imagine that? Matthew McConaughey commercial where he played a couple of different really cool characters. He talked about the Super Bowl and the NFL being all about selling food and products and everything else, calling into question whether or not the event we were actually going to watch was rigged or not, just to sell products, food. Because it's happening at the Caesar Superdome. Salad, get it? I really wanted the Eagles to win because I just felt like there's that one scripture about Christ when Christ comes. It says, when you see the eagles gather, you know that the day is at hand. The eagles, the vulture, when you see them gather together, you know the day is at hand, and it feels like the day is at hand. I even wrote, I said, this is amazing. Eagles for the win with beautiful numbers. The number 22, the Tav, and 40. You put those two together, though, that's the amazing thing. The Strong's number for 2240, if you put them together, is the very words for Christ's coming. For I am come, I will come. 2240. It just doesn't get any better than that. Not to mention, as we're watching this, there's news that the President Donald Trump, he's like, you know what? It costs us 2 cents for every penny we make. We're done making pennies. We're done paying for pennies. No more pennies. And people were quick to point out, they're like, oh, this is the new system coming in. We're getting rid. This is the first step in changing over the monetary system, which may be the case. Of course, everybody hated Taylor Swift. Maybe they really were booing that Swift system and there's something else coming in. But the fact that he's not going to pay for any more pennies, that the last penny has been paid for, tells me that scripture is true. Because in Matthew 5, 6, and elsewhere, it basically says, you're not going to get out of your suffering and your nonsense until you pay the last penny. Well, it looks like no more pennies are being paid for, so maybe that time is at hand. Now, while I'm super excited that the Eagles won, and I see like maybe a brighter day ahead for some of us, that Super Bowl show, the halftime show with Kendrick Lamar, not so great. Not so great. I mean, I dissected it from start to finish, and it's very disturbing. To begin with, the whole Super Bowl show, you got to understand something. There are a lot of people that are watching this, right? I mean, a lot of people. It's like almost like 120 million people or something were watching this thing, maybe more. Many decodes on the halftime show have to do with Kendrick Lamar and Drake's feud, and also with Sony, considering the set looked very much like a controller for a PlayStation, which is owned by Sony. Their dispute is well known. Also, the fact that on the X platform, we saw Serena Williams doing the Crip Walk. Because, of course, there's no love lost there. But I'm thinking that this Super Bowl has a little bit more to do with something else. Not just about a beef between two rappers. And when it begins with this, with the Apple. It's like entering into a portal. Now, you know Apple, if you take the logo, first of all, a lot of people will say, oh, that's the forbidden fruit. And maybe it is the forbidden fruit, right? Maybe AI and all that stuff, we shouldn't have done that. Maybe that's really a problem. Or maybe you take that logo and you mirror an image of it, and next thing you know, you got an alien. There's an interesting little thing that we can think about there, considering next thing you know, a portal's opening up and you're going down into the portal and you enter into what looks like a video game. In fact, the whole stage, the whole set was based on a PlayStation controller. There you see the X, the O, the square, the circle, and it's going in 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. It's moving around in a grid, a 3x3 grid. That was discovered, and it dates back to ancient Egypt. It has different names for the game. Tic-tac-toe is what you probably know.
Shall we play a game?
It was actually the first game in 1952. The tic-tac-toe history changed dramatically when the game was brought to the digital world in 1952 as a game called OXO. Produced by Sandy Douglas, a British computer scientist, it became one of the first known video games to pit a human player against a computer. And here we are on a tic-tac-toe floor with a computer, a PlayStation controller on the ground. You think that that's weird? You want to know how much weirder it gets? As this thing is lightening up, and there's a little countdown. You'll see the countdown. It actually progresses by the number 5. 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. That's like the pentagram. It's a very symbolic number. When you count by 5s, do you know what it means in the occult? Counting by 5s, particularly the number 5 itself, often signifies transformation, change, and the connection between the physical and the spiritual realms. It's associated with freedom and the power of the divine. You could look at it as something spooky. Well, it's going to be something spooky for some, or you could look at it as something almost encouraging, until you realize that the entire set is literally a smart city that doubles as a prison. You look at that shot and you think to yourself, my goodness gracious, you got all the you got the lampposts with the cameras on it. It looks very much like a prison, which reminded me of Eminem was doing his little Super Bowl thing in 2022 with Dr. Dre and crew, and they also had a grid as well, where they had it looked like these little boxable homes. I even put a little tweet out there when I compared the two of them, and I said, at least in Eminem's show, the prisoners got, houses. Because these guys, they got nothing. But you think that's something? So it's counting by 5s, and it's loading. That tells you that everything that's happening in there is happening in a simulated game. A virtual world, a game. A technocratic, AI-driven prison planet, perhaps, for some. That's what it could be, because of course everything took place within the grid. So as it's loading and is counted by 5s, I can't help but think 5 senses, 5 wounds of Christ. 5 is the number of grace. 5 is a good thing. A lot of people, as the halftime show progressed, they were freaked out by a couple of the messages that popped up on the screen. One of them said, warning, wrong way. And people were like, well, that's just really spooky. But I'm like, don't you want to be told when you're going the wrong way? Perhaps this system is set up in such a way that if you go off course a little bit, you're going to be smacked back down. Super Bowl LIX licks. You take your licks and you pick up the sticks. You better listen. You better behave. This is the day that we're in. I said that it was going to get like this, and it's here. But that's also good for people like you and me who are going to be productive members of society, where it's not, you may feel like you're being oppressed by all the cameras and everything else, but you also may be able to get out of the game. How do you get out of the game? Well, remember the movie War Games? Remember Matthew Broderick, and he's playing, global thermonuclear war, the game? Do you know how they end up beating the computer, getting the computer to see that this game never ends? There's no way to win it. War is never the answer, by playing tic-tac-toe. And what ends up happening is he says, how about a nice game of chess? The only way to win this game is not to play. So here I'm saying to you, it's like maybe the days of like being controlled by psyops and being controlled by our fears and maybe that's over with. Maybe the experiment's over. Well, you say to me, well, Jacob, what do you mean the experiment? The American experiment, that is. Because, of course, after everything loads, we come down to see Samuel L. Jackson, who, by the way, is Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam is the, we'll say, the spokesperson. He's there watching the entire thing. He's trying to tell you when you shouldn't do this. At one point, he actually said, no, that's too ghetto. You better change it. Meaning, the day that we're entering into, the world that we're entering into, because this is all there is now. The experiment is over. And you keep thinking, well, what do you mean the experiment is over? Well, do you remember the car that you saw him standing on? And then everybody comes out of the car? And it was like, the clown cars where the clowns just keep coming out. This time it's all the dancers dressed in red, white, and blue. People thought, by the way, they thought that he was going to be dressed in all purple because the ad showed purple. How many times have we been talking about purple, crimson, and red? Crimson, purple, crimson, red. It's the clothing of the divine leadership. They put purple, in some chapters they call it crimson, a robe on Christ to shame him, to humiliate him. Purple, the grimace, right? You've been shamed, you've been humiliated. What ends up happening? President Donald Trump comes out with a purple tie. Purple tie. It's the color of a king. And I find it so interesting because we've been talking about it so very much with grimace and everything else. And here, even the Doge team, who at Nebraska University used AI to translate a scroll that was found and earned him, to become one of the co-winners of like the Vesuvius Prize. It's like a big deal. They found these scrolls underneath and they couldn't interpret them. Do you know what the first word that was interpreted was? Purple. Purple. I mean, what's happening here symbolically is exciting to me. Even though what I'm looking at when I'm watching this, artist, Kendrick, who's known for not such great stuff. Remember the $1.5 million diamond encrusted crown of thorns that he wore when he was crying out for, women's rights. But even his song list, he started with Bodies, Squabble Up, Humble, DNA, Euphoria, Man at the Garden, Peekaboo, Luther, All Stars, Not Like Us, which of course everybody was, you want to talk about shame, Drake was put on blast at the Super Bowl, basically called like the worst thing you could be called. Maybe he is, and maybe that's a revelation. Maybe the days where that kind of behavior is okay and tolerable is no longer going to be tolerable. But a lot of these songs, I bring them up for a reason, they're connected to his album called GNX, which is the car that was on the stage, which means Grand National Experimental. That's the car that he gets. The Great National Experiment is maybe America was an experiment. Maybe the way things were was an experiment to see how we could do on our own. And look where it got us, right? Corruption rising to the top. Maybe the message is, now we're going to hold your hand. Uncle Sam is going to lead you through the way, which is what happened throughout this entire halftime show. The Grand National Experimental is a 1987 Buick GNX Grand National Experimental. Guess what it's called? The Darth Vader car. Who drives that? Darth Vader drives that car. Who's Darth Vader work for? He works for the Empire, okay? The Empire is now in charge. The experiment is over. So you better just buckle up and do right. God's got you. Because at the same time, look at the symbolism. Look at what's being shared. Look at what happened. It's a symbol of a changed life, a transformed life, which is what this halftime show was all about. It's all about a changed life through Christ. In the end, what happens? We're judged. This is, where do you think you're going to get judged? You're going to get judged on the grid. We're in the grid. You know, even Samuel L. Jackson's jacket had 8 stars on each side. 8-8. HH. I think it's time for us to stop worrying about the outer court. The only way to win the game is not to play. That's the message, right? That's the message, because at the end, what happened? You got the big game over sign that came up. Game over. It's over, people. It's over. It's time to stop playing. Unless you're going to reboot and have to go through all of this nonsense all over again. You know? Because if you're not going to be flexible like that baby branch, the tender branch, that when the winds of change come, you just kind of go with the flow, and you're going to be stubborn, it's going to break you. It's going to break you. So, in the midst of a spooky halftime show, which I hope now some of my insights have opened your eyes to some, I don't know, maybe just to look at these things through a different light. I mean, it is art, right? When you go into an art gallery, the artist is trying to say something, you try to figure it out. This whole thing, you know, they planned it out for a reason. What are they saying? They're saying sort of like the same thing they said back when Eminem was doing it, because I mean, they look like the same sets. Basically saying just it's not going to be as comfortable, maybe. You know, it's not good. I mean, doesn't it look like a cell block? Doesn't it look like, I don't know. You got to tell me in the comment section what you think. You know, I didn't know the Eagles were going to win. I certainly didn't know they were going to win so decisively. But that gives me even more hope. Because this is the new day. This is the new America. Welcome to the new world, my friends. I told you it was coming. It's a quick change. Remember I said that was going to be a thing? It's a quick change. Things are going to happen so fast. I think the Department of Education was just dissolved. So don't freak out. Don't play the game. That's how you win. I love each and every one of you. If you want to support the channel, get yourself a mug. You know, you can go in the description of the video. Just go hit the Teespring link and you could open anything up and you can look, you get any of the merch, all the merch. It's so super helpful. Don't forget my Truly Free Home. They're giving away 300 loads of free laundry detergent. If you try Truly Free Home, you just go into the description of the video. There's a link there. You click on that link, enter code Jacob. You're going to get 300 free loads, and it's going to be sent to your house, and there's no toxins, and it's good for you, and it works great on the clothes. It's just, the whole thing is awesome for February only. Okay, so you got to get it in now, and try Truly Free Home out. They got so many great products. I love the company. I love the guy that runs it, Steven. He's a man of God. They care, and in the future, there's going to need to be an alternate economy for people that don't want to participate in the new economy. And I got news for you: Truly Free Home, it's going to be something very, very big. But maybe it's going to have a different name. Shh, that's for the future. All right, listen, I love each and every one of you. I hope you have the best day ever. Please do hit the like, share the video around on your way out. If anybody likes the Super Bowl and wants to look into the symbolism, send it over. Send it over to them. Say, check it out. And have the best day ever. I love you all. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.